Welcome to the Untethering Shame podcast, where we're talking about the impact shame has on our lives, from how we dress, think, talk, connect, and for many of us, parent, and how we can begin to dismantle its hold on us to live a shame-resilient and more authentic life. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the unique challenges of raising toddlers and how parents can navigate these difficult years. Our guest, Cara Tyrrell, is a mom of 3, early childhood educator and conscious parenting coach, and the founder of Core for Parenting. This past year, she also launched her podcast, Transforming the Toddler Years, which is directed towards moms like me, raising the COVID generation. Cara uses her degree in ASL, Linguistics and Education to create community, courses, and coaching programs anchored in her collaborative parenting methodology that blends soul and science-based strategies for raising world and kindergarten-ready kids who find success in school and life. Today, I'm super pumped to have this honest and reflective conversation with Cara on why parenting is so hard, the impact COVID has had on parents and caregivers, and what shifts we can make and how we think about and show up in these roles to make them feel less shame-ridden. Cara will share her expertise on raising intrinsically motivated kids who feel true success and achievement, and how paying attention to our language can make all the difference. Now, I know as soon as I say this, many of you can feel your shame start to dance. Shame does a great job weaponizing insight, and we all know that knowing can sometimes get stopped on its way to doing. For many of us, the invitations inside of tips and skills are much deeper, leading us on a path to our own childhood healing, processing, and learning to let go of biases, norms, and low self-worth, validate and feel our own emotions, and show up from a place of neutrality rather than defense. That's a lot to take on. It can be even harder during the days of tantrums, constantly evolving schedules and routines, and the exponential growth and development that occurs during these formative years for our kids. Parenting is not a journey to perfection. It's a journey of exploration and showing up. So as you sit here with us today, just know that Cara and I are, and will get it wrong as moms, leaders, business owners, even with all of this information and education. We all will, no matter what we come in with. And that's what makes us human. The goal is not to get in our own way on the getting back up part. So tell your shame to take a seat. I know it won't leave, but it doesn't have to stop you from being here and taking in this information with us today. So let's dive in and talk shame and toddlerhood. Cara, welcome.
Oh my gosh. I am so moved already by your words. This is going to be an amazing conversation.
I've been thinking about this. I knew when we were meeting, and I'll make sure I put a link to our episode from your podcast. So along with a few of my other favorites, because you've been really hitting it out of the park. So let me just give you that compliment right now. They're fantastic. I thought as soon as I met you, even in our pre-meeting before doing your podcast, wow, we vibe on an energy level that I think is rare. And not that other people don't think this way, act this way, but just I can tell both of us have done a lot of work to create space to just sit in this space of discomfort and exploration and be willing to have hard and meaningful conversations. And so particularly with your focus to people like me, toddler moms, COVID kid, toddler moms, it's been really wonderful to have somebody that I vibe with, but also you're talking about the things that I need to hear and reminding me of those things in a way that I can really access them. And so, yeah, I think selfishly, but also just excitedly for everybody else listening, I've been super pumped for us to connect and for me to be able to learn more from you today as well.
Well, thank you for that compliment. Putting out podcast episodes is where I have found my heart inside my voice. And I feel like it's just the outlet that I've been waiting for. And honestly, I don't know why I waited so long to start. So yes, I've been getting a lot of feedback. We can feel your heart. And if that's true, then you are exactly the mom that I want to be talking to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's this weird thing that the first day I recorded 2 episodes, day 1, and I have been sort of batch recording and then giving myself the grace to then do the editing, which is not the easy part. And also you got to kind of fumble through it. And as I'm doing this, day one, I was like, why have I not been doing this my whole life? Like, I love therapy. I love those conversations. I love talking to people, but this is different. There's something about this. And I think it's the sort of commitment when you get the right people on the other side of the call to explore. And so it's the balance of we're learning and sharing at the same time, which is where I think all of us do the best, is when we can share who we are, what we know, what we've learned, but we're open to learning from each other. And so I'm curious now to have you coming here today to be thinking about this. I'm making some assumptions about maybe what your answer will be, but what's one word to describe how you're feeling right now as we're getting ready to dive into this conversation?
So inspired.
That actually wasn't one of the ones I thought, so I'm glad that I'm wrong. I was thinking maybe excited, maybe energized, empowered. And so I think, it's adjacent, but it is, I think it's a true piece. And I'm curious because, you've talked about this. You don't have toddlers in the home anymore. You've had toddlers in your life. You had them, for their whole toddlerhood. And you've obviously been in the education world for a really long time. So you've been around kids of all different ages, but you've seen, hundreds, maybe thousands of toddlers at this point. How did you decide this is where you want to focus? This is what you want to do. And there's a hole here, and I need to help build a business that supports people in this very specific phase of life.
What a great question. So I have always been surrounded by children of all ages, including my own, of course. But a couple things here. One, when I left the classroom and decided that the hole that needed filling was the birth to 5 empowerment of parents during those super formative years, as you mentioned, space, a couple things I knew to be true, because I do the soul and I wrap it with the science, but it was the science that said to me, we have a problem. So here's why I left the classroom. I knew that 85% of children's foundational brain growth, the literal size of their brain, was done growing by 5 years old. And then I looked at the test scores, and consistently, class after class, 60%, and this wasn't just to me, like this is national averages. 60% of incoming kindergartners test as not ready in all 4 areas of early learning that they need to be successful when they start school. And I was like, that's a hole. And I'm being asked to fill the hole up. I'm being asked to recover skills that could have easily and organically, through loving, connected interactions and conversations and expectation setting and supportive moments at home, been put in place before they even come to school. So that's why I said toddlerhood was going to be my focus. And then I started designing the curriculum of Core 4 parenting while I had tween and teen girls at home that were mine. And I went to do it in such a way that I knew I just had to get my hands dirty again. And so I became a full-time nanny. And I had the infants and the toddlers simultaneously to my tween and teens. And I had this revelation. And I said, oh my gosh, toddlers and teenagers are the same person. They're in different phases of their life. Right. They're dealing with different actual stuff. But their emotional regulation challenges, the same. Their physical bursting and growth in their bodies and physiological challenges, the same. Their neurological learning leaps, the same. What if there was a way to support the toddler years such that we had this beautiful relationship with our kids, grounded in what I call the Core 4 connectors, that we could use along the way through every age and stage, so that the teenage years didn't have to be what everybody thought they did. So that was my big moment when I said, this is a human experience. It's not about how old they are, essentially. We are human beings who are fallible, as you said, right? We make mistakes in our humanness, raising other human beings who also should be allowed to make mistakes. And collaboratively, as a team, We should be able to negotiate it together, to be mutual problem solvers, to apologize to each other and forgive each other, to learn how to do better next time because it's okay to be human beings. And so that's how I teach parents how to interact with their toddlers, because it
Mm-hmm.
sets the foundation from day one to be a great human being, which is what this world needs. And when you feel aligned with who you are, when you know what some of your strongest skills are, when you know what you struggle with,
Mm-hmm.
then you actually are a more open and ready learner in every way. And those are the most successful kids in school as well.
Well, it's interesting. So a couple of things came up when you were first talking about this. So one, the notion that, they're coming in at kindergarten and you're being asked to, as you said, fill the gaps, but also it's not just fill the gaps, but it's fill the gaps and then move them to the next level. So now that they're first grade ready, so there you've got a short amount of time and an overly taxed, overburdened system. And I think, I say this, my sister-in-law has been in, and my mother-in-law in early childhood education from infants to 4K for decades. And a lot of what I think they even see now is, my assumption is motivated by overwhelm in the home, by unresolved pain, trauma, oftentimes unknown pain and trauma for the parents and the caregivers, where it just feels like parenting and doing the work is inaccessible. I don't know how to do this. I can't come up with these activities. Like, I've got 1,000,007 things to do and I already feel overwhelmed. I can't take on X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to put it here. Like, that's the teacher's job. And so I think probably on a subconscious level, it's sort of a collective dismissal. And often then in that sort of the subliminal messaging that you're probably not going to be very good at it or do it well. And so just don't try. So I'm curious, because then I'm thinking about, okay, I love this. I love what you're describing. And the therapist in me is going, so you basically went into kind of doing two roles at once, because you're going to be really thinking about the kids and how to empower the parents with the kids, but you're also like inadvertently stepping into therapy with all the parents because of all their resistances, all their defenses, all of those. I can't do it. I won't do it. Whatever that is. Tell me about what that was like for you and how you make space for that in what you're doing.
It's so wild that you bring that up. I have a couple who went through my Transforming the Toddler Years course, and I was always, as I was reading their feedback at the end, they said, everything that you told us we were going to get out of this, we did. But you know what else? Our marriage is better.
Yeah.
We parent on the same page. We see our kids through their own eyes now. Like, we are on the same page, so they're on the same page. So
Right.
everybody's getting better. They made a joke. They said, maybe you're also a marriage counselor.
Yeah.
But that's the human experience of it all. And listen, I just want to say to parents out there who are like, I feel like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do to get my kids ready to go to school. You probably are, based on what you've been told you are supposed to do to get your kids ready for school. Right. So I want you to like pick up all the shame that I'm about to throw down and just toss it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It is not your job to exclusively have a kid who can do their ABCs, 1, 2, 3's, colors and numbers. That is not kindergarten readiness. That's 1/4 of school readiness.
Mm-hmm.
The other 3 components, and this is where the kids were faltering, are more important. The social, emotional comprehension of what they're feeling and how to process what they're feeling and move it through their body in such a way that it's an appropriate expression, not hitting or kicking, right? The understanding that other people have different feelings than they do, the interpersonal skills, and that they can use words to have a conversation with another person to solve when they don't understand that, instead of those other behaviors. And then the physical body awareness and the physical body control that they need to be part of a small or large group setting, like a classroom. Those are the three other readiness components. And that does not involve sitting down and looking at flashcards. That involves being a human inside a relationship, inside a home that has a nurturing system that allows you to grow by experiencing those interactions.
When I think about that, and I can say now, kind of going through this, and I will preemptively say for everybody listening, I'm not shy about the fact that as a therapist, I think sometimes I feel even more pressure, like I have to get it right. Like if she has a tantrum, it's a failure on my part because I'm supposed to be able, like, we've got the feelings corners in the books, and we talk about, I've made jokes since I was pregnant that I think the thing that's going to happen when she's a teenager is she's not going to want to go do risky things or things that would get her in trouble. Not necessarily because she's afraid she'll get in trouble, but she's going to be so like, I don't want to have to process this with my mom for 45 minutes. Like, it's not worth that to me. Like, I'm just going to say, no, y'all go do your thing. I don't want to have to talk through my shame and my guilt and why I was trying to do, like, I'm done with that. And so, and it works, but it's so hard. I mean, I've seen when I can come in, when I can take a breath, when I can validate how I'm feeling and then recognize how she's feeling, detach from what she's feeling being my thing to solve or fix, or that it's a statement about how good I am as a parent. It works beautifully. And even with all of these skills, even, reading as much as I do, I'm really good at naming my emotions. It's still really hard. And so I think about all the parents you're meeting that they probably never had that modeled to them. They didn't grow up in a home where someone was like, oh, are you feeling anxious right now? When you're anxious, it seems like your body's telling you to hit. I get that. Your body's feeling a lot. Here are some other options. It was, listen to me or else, or you stop that. Like I just saw it with a parent the other day. I mean, again, you want to give people as much love and grace because everyone's doing the best that they can. But their kid was having a really hard time at T-ball and started crying because they were upset they lost their gum on the field. And she goes, you stop that. You stop that right now. We don't cry. We don't cry here. And I was like, oh gosh, my heart is hurting for both of you, because my guess is you were told that as a kid and you don't know how to help your kid through this at all other than to just push it away. And so I'm assuming that shows up for you a lot, is people are like, that sounds beautiful, but I don't even know what I'm feeling in a given day. How do I do that?
Can I? I just so want to address this right now. A couple things. And I have a story that is going to like punctuate this. Let's set the groundwork for understanding that COVID was an elongated experience of living inside a survival moment.
Ooh, pause and say that again, because that is the most beautiful way someone has articulated COVID. Say that one more time.
Experiencing COVID was like living inside survival mode for an elongated period of time. And survival mode is a positive reaction that our body uses to protect us, but it's only supposed to be for a sprint or a short burst until we can get ourselves regulated again and situated and come up with the new plan, right? That did not happen. It was years of anxiety and stress and overwhelm and not knowing and if-thenning and wondering and, am I doing the right thing by keeping my child outside of the public because medically it's safe? And am I doing the wrong thing by keeping my child out of the public because I know that I'm not giving them opportunities for learning? Talk about a cauldron for parental shame and blame and mama guilt out the wazoo. Okay. So I'm meeting so many parents who are stuck in that way of life. It's become modus operandi, the habitual patterns of thinking, the inability to get out of the reaction cycle and stop to intentionally choose responses However, the world has opened back up.
Mm-hmm.
But what hasn't changed, and again, listen to me carefully, parents, because this is not your fault. What has not changed are the expectations for you. Nobody said, oh, let's adjust these milestones because your kids didn't have opportunities to practice them and master them.
Mm-hmm.
So the doctor's sending you home saying you have a delayed child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's saying, let's show more grace to these kids in large social settings. They don't understand how to function when there's this many people around and all the sensory input. Nobody is saying, well, I guess I am, but
right. That's not the majority. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I am the minority, but I say it loudly from every stage that will have me. So here's a perfect example. And then also just to know that your childhood does play a huge role in the way that you already were approaching your parenting journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that making intentional changes to design your parenting journey and your child's childhood is a lot of work. And inside stress and overwhelm and COVID moments, we didn't have bandwidth to do that work. Okay, so what's done is done.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. I was at a preschool graduation a couple weeks ago, and there's 20 kids and they're standing in their line and they have to sing their little song and get their name called and get their certificate. And it's so cute and awesome and wonderful and very pre-pandemic style celebration.
Mm-hmm.
For every kid, there was an average of 4 adults who came to celebrate them. So you have tiny people with 80 to 90, because there's all the teachers too, right? 80 to 90 to 100 tall adults looking at you. Their eyes, their emotions, the balloons in the hand, the music, overwhelming to the max.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids managed it no problem. Some kids were like doing the tomfoolery thing and making themselves look giddy and silly because that's what they had to do to manage their emotions. And there was this one little girl who just couldn't do it. And she moved her body 5 feet away from the line. We were outside, so there was plenty of space. And she moved her body 8 feet and then 12 feet. And then she just kept moving her body, like literally backing away. And I could just watch her body get smaller and smaller and holding herself and she finally stopped to a space where she felt safe enough to just stand there and let them finish what they were doing. Meanwhile, the teachers, come back, come back, come back. The parents are, doing everything in their power to get her to come participate, and she's just can't. Flash forward to when we're leaving, I'm getting in my car and I hear a mom yelling. And I turn around because it, gets me. And you know what I'm about to say.
Mm-hmm.
This mom is so wrapped up in what she thinks the appropriate behavior for her child should be in this moment, and parenting in public, and, the shame that her child. I am so mad at you, she said to her. I am so disappointed in you. You really let us down. I was crying inside my heart for so long. But here's what really we need to remember. This mom doesn't realize what her child has been through, or I guess to be more clear, not been through. She doesn't realize the limitations socially that her 3-year-old has because of the pandemic experience. And so when we don't know what we don't know,
right,
we perpetuate problems by holding people responsible for expectations they can't possibly meet.
I'm just sitting in that feeling because I think, and it's really easy because when I first became a parent, obviously, so Everly was born 2 weeks later is when lockdown happened. And Jordan, my husband, is an emergency medicine physician. He was going into his final year of residency at the time, or kind of wrapping up second year, going into his final third year. So we were in this very weird position of he had to be in it, like fully in it with COVID. And so I had to be fully out of it. Like we were like, we have a newborn and we don't know what this means. We don't know what COVID fully is going to look like. If she gets it, what's going to happen? And everything from a therapy perspective moved online. And my mother-in-law was here for a period of time. And so we had sort of the luxury by design of me being able to still do some of the things that I was doing for my own work, but keep my daughter safe. And again, I say that from that. I love what you said. So I made you say it twice about the survival piece. Like, we were able to design a system of survival that worked for us, that could minimize the effect of, and I live with PTSD. And so it was kicking up every part of, I've had very insecure attachment, intermittent reinforcement, my own childhood trauma. And so having some stability in a very unstable time was really great. And it's been an interesting experience, kind of walking through and navigating. You couldn't go to parenting groups. I struggled with things like breastfeeding at periods of time. Nobody was meeting to talk about that. And it's different online. And I tried to join a couple of groups. And by the end of it, I was being their therapist, which I'm sure was my defense and my like inherent nature to people please. But what ended up happening when I started to get around other moms is I got caught in the comparison trap, which I think a lot of parents get in, which is, I'm only a good parent if I can find other parents that are doing it worse. And I'm never going to be as good of a parent as all these people. And I think social media made that even harder for a lot of people. I have a lot of coaching clients now that became moms during the pandemic as well. And it's, they're not, I did this activity and I'm following all these people and it's supposed to be all this fun stuff and my kids won't engage and what's wrong with me and why won't they do tummy time? I'm like, because your kid's just telling you they don't like tummy time. But when I was in it, I would think the same things. I've got to rotate the books. I've got to do this stuff. My kid's got to be on her belly this amount of time. She's a toddler. She's supposed to be doing this. What about this? So you get stuck there. So I think the sense of taking in information and data to realize that every parent is really, I would say most parents are doing the best that they possibly can at any given moment. And I only say most because I'm reserving the right that I don't want to make any all or nothing statement. But I think in general, we're all just doing the best we can. But it's really tricky. And we hear those stories and then we start to feel so much, I think, projected shame towards the parents that are doing those things. Like, how could she do that? Doesn't she realize she's hurting her kid? And I felt that. I've seen moms spank their kids in public. And I'm like, I just want to go over and grab your hands and just scream in your face what you're doing. Or the mom yelling at their kid. But it's like, we're all doing this in different ways because all of us, like you said, we're parenting from what we experienced. And for most of us, I think when the world did start to open back up, not only are we not fully recognizing the opportunities our kids didn't have, we just kind of ran back into some sense of normal and didn't really give ourselves space to be like, this was trauma. Big T, multiple T's in a row, trauma. Your brain doesn't know what you're doing either. Like, my social skills are still adapting. I don't know how to be in public half the time. I'm angry and I don't know why. I'm sad and I don't know why. Like, that is us too. And so there's the grace in that. And so someone can hear that example and it feels like a more, I think, direct, extreme example, but we all do it in little ways too. What do you think is the invitation for us internally? Where is the reframe? Where is the release? What do we do to not get pulled in those directions of reactivity? And ultimately, my guess for that mom is shame because she didn't want to be viewed as a bad parent who couldn't get her kid to listen. How do we deal with that part?
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I made sure that I reserved some empathy for her as well as the mom. So everything that you're describing as I was listening to you talk, it felt like the what? Like, what is my child supposed to do based on what age they are and what milestone I'm being told? And I am a teacher of the who, right? I
Mm,
prioritize the who before the what, because who we are is the indicator of how we will do what we choose to do. And what I
mm,
mean by this is, as parents, it's our job to observe our kids for who they are. You have one, people listening may have multiples. And so they have more of a playground here. They can say, oh, I notice that Bonnie is a real leader, right? She's always the first one who steps up and tries things. But I noticed that my Joey, he really likes to watch and listen and process and make sure that 5 kids do it before he tries it. You're tapping into who your kids are, their natural traits and attributes. And that is going to be the roadmap to supporting them to do what people are saying they're supposed to do. So in this situation, this example I gave, if this mom had the ability to do that, she could have said something like, I noticed that standing with your friends was really hard for you. It must have been so overwhelming to have us all looking at you. I bet you felt a little bit scared. You moved your body so you felt safe enough to let them finish. We're still really excited that you graduated preschool. We're still really celebrating with you. And you know what? We'll celebrate with you when you're ready to stand next to your friends next year, if you are. That type of, I understand who my kid is, what they've been through, what's probably not a skill. Not every single human being develops on the same timeline in every area. This is a crazy, silly example, but it's very tangible. We have a huge greenhouse. We're ex-commercial farmers where I live. And so we planted for ourselves this year. I planted 2 rows of beans at the exact same time on the same day. Okay. One row is up and 3 inches tall. And the other one, some of them are still just starting to come through the soil. And I'm like, what the heck? What's wrong with you? Bean seeds? I planted you at the exact same time. And then I went, oh, okay. You're just taking a little longer, and getting up through that soil was just a little harder for you. And who knows if it was the soil quality or the amount of water that I gave you, right? The variables are so many. So if you're a parent who you're looking for the check marks, you're looking for the list, and for someone to just say to you, do all these things and you'll be fine. I really am sorry to tell you, it doesn't work that way. You've got to get deep into it with your kid.
So yes, everything you're saying, I'm just like, I really hope you gave us that in the beginning of noticing, set your shame aside, because what you're describing, how you're doing it, it's so easy for our brains to catalog all the ways we're not doing what you're describing. And because you're making it accessible, that is both a gift and a curse for people, depending on where they are in their shame journey in the moment. But one of the things I think is key, and it's nice to be able to step back. And my guess is with this girl, that probably wasn't the first time she distanced herself or needed a moment, needed some space. She's indicating how she handles things in different points. But this was bigger because there was an expectation of how the celebration was going to go. And I think for a lot of us as parents, we feel a little robbed of not having the moments that we wanted to have too with kids, depending on, when you had your kids, if you had them during the pandemic, if they were before, if you had kids prior and then again during, it looked different. And so what that experience has felt different. And so it's hard. There's this constant iterative grief around things not looking the way you expected. And part of that is normal parenting. You went through this when your kids were young too, but then it is layered with this other piece. And I think I love when you gave the example of what they could have said, because you do what you're noticing. So that very objective noticing of what the experience was to help them see like, okay, yep, I did this. Did you feel this? All right. My guess is you felt this. So helping them label their emotions or their experience. And then also coming back to who you are as a person is not better or worse based on this experience. This is one way of something that happened, how you handled it. And I think what we forget about is we lose the celebration of the individual in the thing that happened. And I think about this even yesterday. My daughter, she's at a new school, new teachers. She's never been willing to go. She'll pee. She'll go, to the bathroom a little bit at school. She's never been willing to poop outside of the house. Just
Mhm.
never been a thing she'll do. We've traveled one time to Wisconsin and we were gone. It was the three of us, but I was the only person she would go to the bathroom with. She wouldn't even go with her dad. Like it was back to like, only mom can take me. Only mom can do this because it was new.
Mhm.
Well, she pooped at her new school yesterday. And then apparently she didn't tell her teachers and wiped herself. Well, she's 3. She does not have the capacity to do that. She came home and there was some on her still. And then my immediate reaction was I felt so bad for her. I felt scared she was going to get an infection. I felt mad that the school should have known better. I noticed all these things flooding as she's just going to the bathroom. And I'm like, okay. And just like watching them come through. And then I got back to what's the celebration here? My kid, for the first time, felt safe enough to have a bowel movement at a place that wasn't at home with mom and dad. How cool is that? Don't lose that in the midst of all this other stuff. And so I paused and I said, oh, baby, how cool is that you felt so safe to be able to do that at school? And put your arm out once. She put her arm out. And I said, look at how long your arm is compared to how long mom's arm is. She's like, yeah. And I said, which arm's longer? And she said, yours. We kind of go through this. And I was like, my arm is a lot longer in proportion to my body overall. So my arms are able to wipe and get me fully clean. Your arms just aren't designed to do that yet. They're designed to still allow for other people to be a part of that. And your teachers are a really safe way to do that. So when we go to the bathroom, if we have a bowel movement, we just got to call our teachers in. We just got to say like, hey, I pooped. I need a little help. She still felt some shame. I could see it. She felt embarrassed. It's the first time this has ever happened to her. And so we just kind of processed it. She kind of shut down a little bit for a moment. And I was like, wait, I handled this so well. Why are you still shutting down? A pause. I was like, I would feel that way too. Give it some space. And then this morning she got up and she goes, I'm going to tell my teachers the plan today at school. As soon as we got to school, she pulls her teacher aside. She tells her what the plan is. And she got so excited about it. I did well. And I'm saying that like I can celebrate myself for that.
Yes.
And that is daily work. Because my immediate reaction is anger at them, disappointment that she didn't ask for help, fear that she's going to get sick. So I got to maybe scare her into not doing that again so she doesn't get an infection. And you just have to stop and be like, oh my gosh, it's okay. It is okay. And I have the privilege of a sister-in-law who still runs a preschool program. And so I called her in Wisconsin. I was like, this happens all the time, right? It's like, yes. This doesn't mean anything about the school, doesn't mean anything about the teacher. Like you did a great job. Let's come down. And so I think about that and just think about in that moment, my drive was to focus on the what instead of who she is. And I love that distinction. And I'm big into talking about the why when we think about our purpose, our values, and kind of as parents exploring why are we reacting? Why are we being pulled that way? And when I got to that point last night, when I thought about it, I hate the idea that my kid isn't getting everything she needs in every given moment. And this is a natural parenting thing. We all hate that our kids are going to be made fun of at some point. Someone's going to be mean to them. Someone's going to hurt them. And so I felt a shame, like I'm supposed to protect her from anything bad happening. And I couldn't. And it elevated. And so I think for so many of us, I know I'm jumping a little bit, but so much of what comes up for me is this notion that I think we're just trying to protect our vision of what this was supposed to be like and give our kids every bit of the world that we want them to have. And sometimes we don't go about it in the way that really allows them to get everything they want, which is just our love and celebration and rules and things too.
Yeah.
Like, you can't hit people, like you said, helping them not engage in those behaviors. But by setting you don't hit people, that's not what we do. And don't do this. And I'm disappointed. We're focusing on the what. We're not coming back to, oh my gosh, you're a person that feels really deeply. And this is what happens when you feel really deeply. And I totally get it because sometimes I want to hit and punch things too. Here's something I've learned that we can try. What if we try it together? The last thing that came up for me, and then I want to give you a chance to kind of help parents think about what's their next step and letting them know whether that's with you and your programs, because they're just fantastic. But even just before they even are ready to do that, like what is that next sort of gift they can give themselves? I think a lot about, I'm reading the book Gifts from a Challenging Childhood right now. And it talked a lot about kind of what we went through as kids. And one of the things that they're talking about is parentification. So sometimes when our kids are expected to either they over mature or I don't think the word is under mature, but it's a sort of extreme in maturity that manifests based on what's expected of them. So either they're the problem kid, they're never doing anything, or they're expected to always be good and follow and do this kind of stuff. And how easy that is to start to expect our kids to be more than their developmental age. And so my guess is my daughter is very empathic. She has we had friends over the other night. She had never met them before. She met them, came inside, asked me to sit down, and then told me that she felt anxious because there were people in her home she didn't know who they were. And I was like, oh, this is like the magic. The therapist mom is like, oh my gosh, we've been talking about emotions and it works. 6 hours later, or maybe 8 hours later, whatever, the next morning, she had a complete tantrum because she couldn't find one of her stuffed animals and she didn't know what to do about it. And the only way she could handle it was like stomping her feet really, really loud and yelling because she didn't have the words to express it. Both of those are the same kid, but it wouldn't have been reasonable for me to expect the next morning she can use those words in the same way because she did it once. And so I think about maybe the gift you're offering parents is letting all of us be human, and particularly our kids, and not expecting too much from them or ourselves, or expecting in a vein that isn't helpful. We can expect that we talk about values and kindness and, what we need. But my 3-year-old who had a tantrum because she couldn't find the words is still just where she needs to be, even if the day before she could articulate exactly what she felt and didn't have the tantrum. So when you think about all this, and again, I'm just processing the magic of what you give people, which is just that the reflection, the thinking, the invitation to just pause. And I think that's the beauty of what you give people. All the parents that are listening that are ready at the ear of what's next for me. What do I do? How do I want to stop reacting. I want to stop ending my day feeling like I'm a bad parent or that I'm somehow missed the mark or everyone seems to do this better or why can't my kid do blank? What's that next step for them?
Yeah, it is exactly what you just said. And I'm going to share a gift that I have for everybody that it totally aligns with that next step. But I'd love to just wrap by grabbing something that you said about losses. COVID created lots of losses that were not just life related. We lost and have to grieve so many things that we didn't get to do, have, etc. for that time period. And so allow yourself that and then lean into the celebrations that we've been talking about that are in the rites of passage and recreate them if you have to. My daughter was a COVID senior. Graduation wasn't. That rite of passage was taken away. Graduation party, nope. Celebration with family, nothing. I have another I have another daughter. She's 18. She just graduated from high school a few days ago. So we did a combined celebration this year because we could. We did both girls at the same time because without the rites of passage, it's really hard to go to that next step as a human and into your developmental space that you're supposed to be walking into. Claire was stuck for a long time. She's moving in a few days. It's time to celebrate it. So my gift is a little guide. It's called 5 Mindset Mantras for Managing Toddler Meltdowns. And it's for you. It's your mindset. It's your mini scripts. It's your reminders that you can say out loud to yourself, or I've recorded the audios for you too. So you can listen to me say them to you in that moment where you need to take a minute and observe. And that is the first step to mitigating meltdowns in a different way than you've been doing thus far. And from there, you'll just get some emails from me that give you a ton of other resources and options. And if working together in my program is the right answer, then you'll know.
I love that. And I've read that all 5 of those. They're fantastic. I think that they are, again, they're invitations that can feel really hard when you're in those states of reactivity. You're not going to just automatically be like, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm going to reframe it to this right away. But when you open it and you read it, when you're not in those states, and then you start to invite them in, or I had somebody that I shared some of those with, they downloaded it as well. They wrote a couple of them up on Post-it notes and put them in some of the main locations that they're with their kiddo. So then when that happened and there was this sort of frustration and their kid responds to any emotion very physically. And that really charges her. She gets really reactive, kind of scared, kind of angry. She just put them up everywhere. And then she had them as little visual cues and reminders. And so giving yourself that grace, it's such an incredible guide that you have. Your voice is also very calming. So I think it is helpful sometimes to have somebody else saying it to you. And it also feels like you're not alone in it when someone else is reading it. And I think your emails and just your podcast. So even if someone's like, I'm not going to sign up for that, or I'm overwhelmed with emails, fine. But check out the links to her podcast. Look at some of the other stuff. It's fantastic. I'll put a link to the episode that we did where we talked about shame. And there's so many other juicy ones that are up there. And I think just you are not a bad parent. You are not screwing up because you're seeking help. You aren't supposed to know how to do this alone. We live in a world and a culture that promotes individuality and silos. That doesn't mean that that is the most healthy and helpful way to live, to function, and to raise our kids. We are all learning and doing. I know for me, I struggle when I have to tap out and I need help because I feel like I should have been able to do it. Asking for help is one of the best things you can do. And downloading this guide is you releasing your shame and saying, it's okay that I consume information and seek support and help. So, Cara, thank you. This has been incredible. I love it. I can't wait for people to connect with you. Again, as someone who's benefited personally and professionally from you, you are a gift. And I hope that you continue allowing your heart to show through in your podcast and all the work you put in the world.
Thank you so much for the space to share. And I won't stop. This is my mission. We are raising the COVID generation, and they need us to show up differently because they are built differently. And educationally, I will 100% champion them for as long as it takes.
I love it. Well, you heard it. Connect with her. And for everyone else, I will see you here next Sunday.